Hello and welcome to my channel In Search of Wonder. My name is Anne and today I'm going to try a chapter from 3 different Regency novels and see which one I want to read next. If you are new here, my voice does not always sound like this. I am in the grip of a dreadful cold that just will not let me go. Thankfully, I more or less feel fine. But I have canceled all of my evening activities and obligations because I just need to rest and try and regain my voice. So I'm also kind of stuck in not knowing what book to read next. I have 3 options for one of the prompts for Feb Regency, which is to read a novel by a Regency author that I have not read, new to me Regency author. So that rules out Jane Austen and Mariah Edgeworth and Fanny Burney. So I have 3 that I downloaded from Project Gutenberg onto my Kindle. And I thought I would try chapters and see of each one and see if one of them sticks out that I would like to read. And also I figured this sort of video would not take much voice from me because mostly I'm going to be reading, and then I'll just give you a quick recap of each chapter that I read and which one I end up choosing. I have with me an Americano that I just made, but I did have tea earlier today. For those of you who are thinking, why isn't the girl drinking tea? I have had tea today. I will have more tea today, but I made myself an Americano because why not? And I put in it a healthy mixture of honey and cinnamon because I have been taking honey and cinnamon all day today in an effort to kill this, whatever it is, in my throat. And so it's quite delicious, and it also packs a bit of a punch because there's a lot of cinnamon in it. And I have a little notebook because I can't keep track of things. And if I'm going to read a chapter from 3 different books, I know if I just rely on my noggin, yeah, I am not going to remember which things go with which books. And if I try to recap them, I'm going to mix them all up into some kind of amalgamation of 3 different Regency novels. So gonna keep some notes. And I have my Kindle with my downloaded books. So I have The Vicar of Wakefield by Oliver Goldsmith. I have The Life and Opinions of Tristram Shandy, Gentleman by Laurence. And I have Wild Irish Girl by Lady Morgan, I believe. All of which are new to me authors. And the first 2 are books that have been on my TBR. The Tristram Shandy one has been on there for quite some time. So part of me is leaning towards that one. But honestly, I feel like it could go either way at this point. So I'm going to do some reading. I may have to interrupt myself and do some dinner prep here in a little bit, but I may also keep reading. So I will check back with you in a little bit and let you know which book I'm going to go with. later the same day, and now I'm competing with the dishwasher. Apologies. I'll try to be brief so that when it gets to its really noisy part of the cycle, maybe it won't be so bad. Anyways, so the 3 books that I read. First of all, I started with Tristram, such a tongue twister, Tristram Shandy, The Life and Opinions of Tristram Shandy by Laurence. Very short first chapter. Also very funny. He starts out by talking about starting the story of his life with his conception. Yes, you heard me right. So, he starts out by saying, I wish either my father or my mother, or indeed both of them, as they were in duty both equally bound to it, had minded what they were about when they begot me. So basically, he's trying to say that he is the way he is because of the circumstances under which he was conceived. The end of the chapter says, quotes, what is the conversation that he imagined his parents to have been having. It says, pray, my dear, quoth my mother, have you not forgot to wind up the clock? And then his father takes the Lord's name in vain. And it says, cried my father, making an exclamation, but taking care to moderate his voice at the same time. Did ever woman, since the creation of the world, interrupt a man with such a silly question? Oh my goodness. So definitely off to a very ribald start, which, by the way, did you know that that word was pronounced that way? R-I-B-A-L-D. Like, I totally always in my whole entire life thought it would be ribald, but then I decided maybe I should look it up before I said it, because I've never actually said it out loud. And lo and behold, everybody in the world, okay, well, in the United States and England anyway, pronounces it ribald. Like ribald. That makes it sound like R-I-B-B-L-E-D. English does not make sense. I'm just, pronunciation, English, what? Who even knows? Anyway, off to a ribald start there. So next I read The Vicar of Wakefield, the first chapter, which was a little bit longer. And what I thought was somewhat ironic was in his little, well, it says advertisement at the beginning, or advertisement. It's, I don't know if it's a preface or whatever. He's talking about this book. And I underlined this quote. A book may be amusing with numerous errors, or it may be very dull without a single absurdity. How true. But then what I thought was ironic was he goes on to talk about, well, let me just read the whole thing because it won't make sense otherwise. He says, the hero of this piece, the book that you're about to read, unites in himself the 3 greatest characters upon earth. He is a priest, an husbandman, and the father of a family. He is drawn as ready to teach and ready to obey, as simple in affluence and majestic in adversity. In this age of opulence and refinement, whom can such a character please? Such as are fond of high life will turn with disdain from the simplicity of his country fireside. Such as mistake ribaldry for humor will find no wit in his harmless conversation, and such as have been taught to deride religion will laugh at one whose chief stores of comfort are drawn from futurity. His writing was very subtly humorous, and it was making me chuckle to myself, but it wasn't anywhere near like the ribald humor of Tristram Shandy. For example, here's this quote. He opens up the story talking about how he and his wife lived in simplicity and in their community and serving their community, etc. And then he says, thus we lived several years in a state of much happiness. Not but that we sometimes had those little rubs which Providence sends to enhance the value of its favors. See what I mean? It's like very subtly humorous there. Here was another one that I thought was a little bit funny. However, when any one of our relations was, because he was talking about how they were always happy to host people at their home and they were hospitable, etc. He says, however, when any one of our relations was found to be a person of very bad character. Well, let me let the dishwasher finish its thing. When any one of our relations was found to be a person of very bad character, a troublesome guest, or one we desired to get rid of, upon his leaving my house, I ever took care to lend him a riding coat, or a pair of boots, or sometimes an horse of small value. And I always had the satisfaction of finding he never came back to return them. By this the house was cleared of such as we did not like. Anyway, very subtly humorous. I'm also, okay, so I know that, okay, apologies for the change in location. A few minutes later, the same day, the dishwasher was proving to be too potent of a conversationalist, and I could not talk over him, much like my 7th grade students earlier today. And I just don't have the voice to compete today. So, change of location. Anyway, what was I saying? I was talking about the difference in humor between Tristram Shandy and the Vicar of Wakefield. And then I was talking about unreliable narrators. That's where I got stuck by the dishwasher. Unreliable narrators. I know that that is, I believe, a pretty recent development, but I'm finding I'm not sure that I trust yet the narrator of the Vicar of Wakefield. Jury's out on that one. Because he seems to be sharing his perspective on his seemingly perfect life, but I'm getting a sense that it's maybe not as perfect as he's making it seem. Am I on the right track here if you've read it before, or am I totally reading into things that are just not even there? I want to know. I'm very curious. I need to find out. So that was the Vicar of Wakefield. He started out by talking about his quiet domestic life with his wife, and then he moved on to talk about his children and about how proud he was of his children, and about, you know, how this is where I feel like he is like a bit of an unreliable narrator because, let me get it. See, I relocated, but I forgot to bring my Kindle with me. I'm a mess, just a mess. Okay, so he says, when he's talking about his children, he says at the beginning of one paragraph, "It would be fruitless to deny my exultation when I saw my little ones about me, but the vanity and the satisfaction of my wife were even greater than mine." And then, you know, he's talking about how people would say, "Oh, you have the finest children." And his wife would say, "Oh, they're handsome. Handsome is that handsome does." But then she would, you know, have her children make sure they were looking up to show how handsome they were. And then he says, "Mere outside is so very trifling a circumstance with me that I should scarce have remembered to mention it, had it not been a general topic of conversation in the country." So I'm finding I don't really trust him. Anyway, so he's describing his domestic life. That's the start of the story, the first chapter. That's as far as I got, with some subtle humor and maybe some irony or some unreliable narration. I'm not really sure. So then the other one that I read was The Wild Irish Girl. And I actually didn't, I guess it's an epistolary novel. At least so far, all that I've seen are letters. And at the very beginning, it was not what I was expecting at all. It is an exchange of letters between a father and a son. The son who has gotten himself into trouble, and the father is promising to get him out of trouble, but is going to curtail his activities by sequestering him together with himself as the father in Ireland, at their estate in Ireland, and etc. So it was a very interesting exchange of letters between the two of them. You could tell that they were both very upset with one another. In the second one, it seemed like perhaps the boy was, the young man was repentant and willing to do what was necessary to get back in his father's good graces and regain his reputation, etc. At the point where I stopped reading, he is apparently writing a letter to an acquaintance of his explaining why he is now being shipped off to Ireland and spending some time in Ireland. That's as far as I've gotten. So that one, I felt like of the three, the language was the most superfluous. Like, it just is so extremely wordy, especially since they're supposed to be letters. I mean, I guess people maybe wrote like that, but here's the first paragraph that the father writes, the very first paragraph of the story, and the father is writing a letter to his son. If there are certain circumstances under which a fond father can address an imprisoned son without suffering the bitterest heartrendings of paternal agony, such are not those under which I now address you. To sustain the loss of the most precious of all human rights, and forfeit our liberty at the shrine of virtue, in defense of our country abroad, or of our public integrity and principles at home, brings to the heart of the sufferer's dearest sympathizing friend a soothing solace, almost concomitant to the poignancy of his afflictions, and leaves the decision difficult, whether in the scale of human feelings triumphant pride or affectionate regret preponderate. That is so many words. That was bad grammar. That was so many words. There were too many words. Too many words. Fewer words. Smaller words. You could have said the same thing much more easily. I felt like the other two narrators or authors who, interestingly, were men, their prose was much more direct and said much more with much less. For example, in the Vicar of Wakefield, he's near the very beginning. This is also from the first paragraph. And he's talking about why, well, okay, let me read the first two sentences. I was ever of opinion that the honest man who married and brought up a large family did more service than he who continued single and only talked of population. This is the part I highlighted. From this motive, I had scarce taken orders a year before I began to think seriously of matrimony, and chose my wife as she did her wedding gown, not for a fine glossy surface, but such qualities as would wear well. Here, in just a few words, you recognize that he got married, what is, you know, the sort of person who, you know, thinks through his reasons for doing things and does them. He took orders. Not less than a year later, he's purposely planning to get married, and he gets married. And then also, they are practical people. He chose his wife as she chose her wedding gown, not for a fine glossy surface, but such qualities as would wear well. And you already know so much about them and about him, and half the words. So that is what I'm going to go with. I'm going to read the Vicar of Wakefield. Now, not to say I will not read Tristram Shandy or The Wild Irish Girl, but I will definitely start with the Vicar of Wakefield because the humor is humorous without being ribald, and it is straightforward prose that I appreciate, subtle, says a lot with fewer words, and because I'm curious, because I want to find out about this narrator and what is going on and can I trust them, and because, I don't know, I find I'm more interested in it. I am still curious about Tristram Shandy, and I'm still curious about where the Wild Irish Girl comes in, because so far we only have a rebellious prodigal son and his irate father. I don't know where the girl is. Curious about that. But anyways, gonna start with Vicar of Wakefield. Thank you for joining me on this journey of trying a chapter. Let me know if you have read all three of these or any of these. Do you think I made the right choice? Which one would you have gone with? And if you know about the Vicar of Wakefield, tell me. Can I trust his narration? Talk to you later. Bye.